Hello, my name's Cody Flannigan, and I want to pitch you a movie. You probably know William Shakespeare's classic tale of star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet. Well, if you liked that, then you're going to love Romeo and Juliet 2015. When I finished Romeo and Juliet, I said, well, that was a great story, but what happens next? They could come back as ghosts, or they could come back as zombies, or they could come back as something. But I've come up with a story where they come back in a way that's even more exciting than any of those things. You see, scientists in a lab come up with a computer system to bring back dead people as virtual reality programs. It's like Jurassic Park, except they're in a computer instead of a theme park. The scientists realized that with this new technology, they could learn all sorts of things from the dead leaders and visionaries of the past. People like Ben Franklin, JFK, Patrick Swayze, George Washington. And then they find the bodies of Romeo and Juliet, and they come up with a great idea. They say, we should reunite the star-crossed lovers that are Romeo and Juliet. We could give them a new life together inside our computer system. And they put Romeo on one disc and they put Juliet on another disc, and they're not like CDs or floppy disks, they're like future discs. One of the computer science guys' sons comes in and he's all like, hey guys, what's going on? Because he's like a cool surfer dude sort of kid, and he skateboards and things. He comes into the lab and he sees these discs and he's like, those are pretty cool. And they accidentally end up in his backpack somehow, and he brings them home and he's looking at them and he sees that there's characters on them, and he's like, whoa, maybe I can put these characters into my big massively multiplayer video game. And so he does. But then something happens when he does so, and one of the characters ends up on one side of the world and the other character ends up way on the other side of the world. And oh my god, the characters are Romeo and Juliet. And this is pretty upsetting because they're happy to be back and, alive, but now they're sad because they're on opposite sides of a giant world. But it's pretty tough because there's lots of bad guys and villainous things, like there's clouds with spikes on them, toadstools that have poison, rats that made weapons out of spoons, some grass that's alive or something. Then after lots of fighting and big CGI action sequences that are just as big and exciting as in, I don't know, like Terminator Salvation or something like that, that's when finally Romeo and Juliet are almost at each other, and there's the big final battle. A problem happens because the internet goes out. They realize that with the internet down, if they get to each other now, they'll never be able to get out of the game. But they realize that they don't care because they just want to be together. So they get together at the end and they kill all the monsters, and they build a cabin for themselves out in the woods of the virtual reality game. And so now they live out the rest of their days in that hill. And the dad and the son are like, they turn the game back on, they're like, oh my god, where are Romeo and Juliet? But we, the audience, know that they're still living out a life. Maybe for a sequel, but that's for another day. If you loved Romeo and Juliet 2015 would be the sort of movie that would get your heart racing, pulse going with all the excitement, and your head swooning with all of the epic romance and action, and it'll be a really cool movie. Romeo and Juliet 2015, the action-packed sequel to the classic love story, where you get to see the eternal love tested on the battlefield.